Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date, Sunday, May 21st, 2017. And I am podcasting at CJ's Java Lounge, located at 400 Southwest 1st Avenue along the New River of Fort Lauderdale, right along southwest section of Andrews Avenue Bridge. It's at the New River Yacht Club, to be exact. Pretty glammy, as usual. Yep, so it was beautiful and warm. Typical South Florida weather, but you know what? I like it. Let me hit the beach after this. See what mood I'm in. Yeah, I went to see a couple shows. I saw a local band, Fathom and Shroud Eater. I missed the opening act. The first band did a debut. I heard they're really good. I'm going to have to check them out in the very near future. They're at Alligator Alley. Yeah, it's like a little hole in the wall. Like the stage is like around the corner. Well, I gotta say, it's a nice little vibe. I have no complaints. They have cool little craft beer and food. And all that good stuff. See some faces I haven't seen in years. So, it's very nice. Yeah, so I just been announced that Sheriff Clark is appointed Secretary for Homeland Security starting in June. Very controversial things among him. And, of course, the whole witch hunt of President Trump with the Russian tides. Too many smoke and mirrors, my friends. And, of course, Donald Trump and the king from Saudi Arabia signed that $110 billion deal of weaponry for so-called defending their country. Something to really look at. You know me, how I come to this government in general, even Saudi Arabia. So much double standards been going on, but regardless from both sides, the pendulum or party. Remember, George Watt talked about parties and politics, or political parties are dangerous to a country in his farewell address. I know I've repeated that a few times, but just to remind others that haven't heard me yet. Okay, well, enough of all that my little ranting. Let's just check in. Speaking of Donald Trump, let's just get this thing going here. And this one here came from News with Views, and it's a good, decent article, pretty good article. They got some lot of good stuff on here, and this was done by Marilyn B. Barnwell. It's entitled "Trump, Russia, Comey, and Piling On," and it's actually part one of this. And it says here, Americans dislike the concept of piling on. We even have rules to prevent it in sporting events like football. Liberal Democrats do not understand this concept. It's pretty easy to identify piling on in a football game. In politics, it's more difficult. Until the public has been so badly abused, it reaches a tipping point and just stops believing anything anyone says. It is part of the reason people who have supported President Trump remain loyal. They understand the concept of piling on. Your enemies do it when they're losing and need to injure an important player on the other team to have a chance for victory, if you call that a victory. On Fox News last Wednesday, former Congressman Dennis Kucinich, a Democrat from Ohio, told American people how close they are to losing their republic. He said the deep state within the bureaucracy is trying to destroy Donald Trump's presidency. And this is from the show Hannity. Even though I'm not a big fan of Sean Hannity in general, but it was, I could say, it's a honorable segment in good faith. But you can see the video. It's like 2 minutes 37 seconds long, little glimpse. But you could probably hit Hannity and all that and see the actual in its entirety, which I did. And of course, Mike Huckabee brought it, agreed as well, which I'm not too keen with a lot of his past actions as governor of Arkansas. Or I'll be very fair. And it says here the former Ohio Democrat congressman is right and should be applauded for taking a stand against the strategies being used against Trump. He loves his country, God bless him. For those who don't understand how serious the ramifications of what the Democrats and their partners in crime, the deep state and the mainstream media are doing, to do a little research about Argentina and Venezuela. Both were thriving nations that take their place on the world economic stage until socialism got a toehold in their economies. In only a few years, Venezuela has become a nation that cannot afford to keep electricity or toilet paper available to its citizens, who are also going hungry. If we lose our republic, don't you think you will sleep through it because you won't? Liberal Democrats look foolish and don't seem to have a slight degree of humility that enables them to see their own childish behavior. Republicans look like they don't know how to spell the word loyalty or best interest of the people. They certainly do not support this Republican president. They look like what they are, compromised politicians who should never be reelected to office. Politicians like Senator John McCain, CFR McCain to be exact, make the rest of us wonder if the voters of Arizona are suffering from mental disorders associated with old age. They reelected the liberal Republican. Are they familiar with the word recall? I don't know if they're I don't know if they do have a recall vote, but I understand what you're saying on that. But they got to look at the state constitution to make that name calls. Because I know New Jersey had the same thing. You can't recall an elected servant on the federal level. I will continue on here. My number one rule in the 2018 elections will be: did you defend Trump when he was being attacked? If the answer is no, I will vote against you regardless of who your opponent is. I hope readers will join me. Voters want a guy named Donald Trump to drain the swamp but reelected to office, one of the biggest alligators who live in it. Same comment to South Carolinians who supported Senator Lindsey Graham, who never saw a microphone he didn't love, whether or not he has something meaningful to say. Of course, he's just another tyrannical neocon glam boy, or butt boy Graham. Right? There is no doubt that Donald Trump has a lot of political lessons to learn. There is no doubt that President Trump doesn't have the kind of temperament that easily succumbs to being told that he, now the most powerful man in the world, has a very large learning curve and that he's not handling it well. His unskilled political behavior just might cost him the presidency. Should we lose him, we also lose our country. All because President Trump doesn't know he doesn't know some things. If the thought of that the president make you pick up your phone or write a letter to your Republican elected officials and tell them to defend our president, you are part of the problem. Our president, you're part of the problem. I don't know who is advising President Trump. News accounts make it sound like his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, fills the role. Whoever it is the wrong person. Hopefully Donald Trump will realize this before the media, intelligence committee, and liberal Democrats take him down. Persons advising him obviously has no insight into the difference between getting things done in the private sector versus the political arena. Or they are afraid to say, Mr. President, you're behaving like someone who knows what they're doing and you do not. The proof of accuracy of my words, I ask you to look at your results thus far. Or they have a hidden agenda. President Donald Trump's actions, especially internationally, get an A. President Donald Trump's political skills, his ability to communicate effectively and understand how to get this legislative agenda passed, get a D. Do Democrats understand that their anti-American behavior will come back to them tenfold? Do Republicans understand their lack of support for their party's president will stand as a reason for the failure of their political party? They are so afraid of what will happen in the 2018 election. They do nothing, which is precisely the wrong thing to do when observing the moods of voters at this point in time. I don't know about you, but both rack packs disgust me. We have business strategies versus government manipulation. We have a president who is particularly successful in the world of business, specifically real estate development and contracting, but who is an obvious neophyte in the world of politics. On the one hand, his followers need to be loyal to him, but on the other, they do not have to accept his personal behavior, which thus far has provided more ammunition to his political enemies than Obama gave ISIS when he withdrew our troops from Iraq. Tell him how you feel. Well, I see it this way. It's been planned for a long time on that, and I've been telling people for years ISIS is a New World Order funded organization, and I'm not going to hold back on that until you give me actual proof. We have intelligence services, even that a schlump like Senator Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, admitted publicly will cut anyone's legs off at the knees if they cross them. It has been affectionately named the deep state. You and I are paying the salaries of those who are trying to win a bloodless coup. Don't you realize it's far worse than anything played out on the stage of the USSR in its worst days? There is little, if any, doubt about certain elements of our very costly intelligence community, and it is huge. Not just a few agencies like the FBI, CIA, Naval Intelligence, and on. Will not hesitate to use information gathered on public or private citizens if it suits their needs. It has been known since the days of J. Edgar Hoover that the FBI holds in a very secret place highly secret information about anyone who serves in government and use that information to manipulate politicians. Yep, and then the News Bus talked about that as well, about how J. Edgar Hoover was very fascinated how the Nazis handled things, and he got those cues from them to bring it to the United States, to his domain. The question that becomes, what needs of the deep state? What is they want from the politicians they manipulate with hidden information about them? What do they want so badly that they are willing to put their security and the entire nation at risk to get it? Based on performance, the answer seems pretty simple. It appears they want total control over you and over me. They want access to easy drugs worldwide, even if it means supporting a war in Afghanistan, so they have access to the poppy fields. The ability to ship drugs wherever they wish. The ability to launder the money that results from the drugs that kill so many American youth. To kill whomever gets in their way with no legal problems and just a few other small things. In other words, they want you to pay their salaries while they screw the nation and enslave you. And they want us to be quiet while they do it. Can we say RICO? Just 6 months ago, people were crowding into Trump campaign rallies shouting, "Drain the swamp." Are those people so naive that they thought Trump could, wearing white boots and a white hat, walk into a huge mud pit filled with snakes, crocodiles, and psychopaths and not get dirty? Are they so naive as to believe that those who hold corrupted power and so abuse that people elected Donald Trump will give that power away without fighting with every weapon they possess? It will cost them trillions of dollars to let the new president keep his promise to let him drain the swamp. They will use any weapon to succeed. Are people so naive that they do not realize how deeply embedded in very ugly personal behavior and crimes those who live in the swamp are? Do people not realize that we have been supporting the very intelligence agency that seek information to compromise those in positions of power so they can manipulate their behavior and gain outcomes they want, outcomes that are abusive to the people? So, we now have Robert Mueller as special counsel in charge of the FBI's investigation into the Russia matter. In truth, Robert Mueller should disqualify himself from serving as special counsel in this investigation. He has a huge conflict of interest. Robert Mueller worked as Comey's mentor, and Comey views Mueller as a protege. The two were very close. Both threatened to resign because of the warrantless wiretapping that involved then Attorney General John Ashcroft in 2004. Greg Jarrett of Fox News pointed out in an article last week. The law governing the special counsel, which is 28 CFR 600.7, specifically prohibits him from serving if he has a conflict of interest in the case. The rule has been interpreted to mean that even the appearance of a conflict is sufficient or disqualification. Most conservatives become suspicious of the wisdom of this appointment when Democrats all rallied around Mueller, raving about what a great decision this was. Combine this. Yep, that's just a boat. Combine this with the consideration of former Democrat leader, independent Senator Joe Lieberman of Connecticut, to the FBI director, and it makes one wonder if Trump is trying to find a way to get himself impeached. Will any investigation include Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's turning over to Russia access about 30% of America's plutonium? For those who don't know, plutonium is the metal required to make nuclear weapons. Well, Mueller's investigation includes Hillary's unlawful email problems, especially the top secret and classified emails identified by James Comey as having been sent from Huma Abedin's computer to her husband, sexual predator Anthony Weiner, who pled guilty to obscenity charges in court last week. We'll see. President Clinton appointed Mueller to become a U.S. attorney in the Northern California District of San Francisco in 1998. I remember Robert Mueller as I listened to Fox News reporters extol Mueller's virtues today. I couldn't help but remember that he was originally appointed FBI director by President George W. Bush, and that 9/11 happened just 8 days after his appointment on September 4th, 2001. He was in charge of the FBI on 9/11. He was also in charge of the FBI a day later when a plane full of Saudi citizens related to Osama bin Laden were flown safely from America back to Saudi shores. He just sounds perfect for this job, doesn't he? No wonder the Democrats love him. As we listen to testimony from intelligence operatives, we need to keep in mind what two things make them successful. One, the ability to lie very well, and two, perform whether actions are required with no pangs of conscience. We need to remember the tactics being used against President Trump, come from a swamp filled with powerful politicians who learned well from the Clintons. When you want to get rid of someone who has you in the corner, tell the world a big lie, one that will resonate and one with which you are familiar because you did what you're telling the world they did. Most of us who work to get Donald Trump elected feeling strong about what is happening to the man the swamp is trying to drain. We wish he had less need to talk about himself, but love his willingness to do the work. The very dirty work for which he takes a lot of flack that needs to be done. All we can do is maintain our loyalty, disbelieve anything that is said about President Trump, and pray that God truly has mercy of those who may be misguided at times, but whose desire to do good for their nation outweighs their occasional recklessness. We can also pray that Robert Mueller recognizes his conflict of interest and negative reactions that result of any investigation he does. We can also pray that President Trump does 10 minutes of research on Joe Lieberman before appointing him as FBI director, and that he stops listening to the advice of a person who suggested he makes such a ridiculous appointment. We'll understand the need to keep our enemies closer than our friends, but disappointment doesn't just keep an enemy closer, it gives him a knife. Yeah, it's an interesting concept there from journalist Marilyn Barnwell. One thing you got to look at, too, politics is one nefarious institution or entity. Yeah, a lot of outsiders, control freaks, etc., then want to make things what it is. And you're talking to a man who's critical of Donald Trump. But one thing I told folks is based on actions, has to have merit. This is why I tell people the whole Russiagate thing is nothing more than a deception, a distraction, a gray cloud over our heads. Because a lot of stuff they're trying to do behind our backs, they will attempt to get away with it. I am not too keen of Lieberman being appointed as FBI director. He's a warmonger himself. He is anti-freedom also. But when it comes to witch hunting or finding a scapegoat, it is unhealthy concept. And this doesn't affect their lives, but everyone around us, around them. Real negative environment. As I said when I was watching that video with on the interview with Sean Hannity, like I said before, I'm not a fan of his show, but it was a good segment. And Dennis Kucinich is right. Yes, he is a Democrat. Was a Democrat from Ohio. Plus, he's a union brother. All right, he's a cameraman for the international. He was a member of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees Local 600. So just to let all you brothers and sisters out there know who are members of a union, you need to think about that too. See the bigger picture or the greater dynamics of what's going on. Yes, we have to be vigilant. The deep state wants to manipulate. It's been going on for a long time with the whole Operation Mockingbird, Mind Control 101, using Edward Bernays' playbook of propaganda. When it comes to witch hunting, you gotta look at things a lot broader. And this is what I have to say about it. And it's all in good faith. All right. Next one here. I just picked this up from Activist Post. Is it from Activist Post originally? Let me just look. Something from the Free Thought Project, to be exact. But Activist Post, people share their information on their site. And this one's entitled, Watch Lawmakers Claim the State Owns Their Children. And it's by Annabella Bamworth. Legislators in Texas have been working toward passing a host of laws to reform the state's Child Protective Service Agency. New legislation has been crafted to improve the agency, which has been multiple dilemmas resulting in detrimental safety problems for the children in the state. There have been several bills introduced this year aimed at improving the agency. One bill in particular, HB 39, seeks in part to require medical exams to be performed more quickly on children who have been newly placed into the foster care system. HB 39, introduced by Representative Gene Wu, Democrat from Houston, would mandate that the state's Department of Family Protective Services schedule a medical examination for children who have been in temporary state custody for longer than 3 business days. Children in rural locations would be required to receive a medical exam within 7 business days. While the bill was originally centered from hasty medical exams for new foster children, questions arose regarding whether vaccines would be included as part of these medical exams. Representative Bill Zelder, Republican from Arlington, the vice chairman of the Texas Freedom Caucus, introduced an amendment to HB 39 to make vaccinations exempt from the required medical treatments. The bill saw a turbulent debate upon Zedler's amendment as the discussion turned to childhood vaccines and who should be responsible for crucial medical decisions when custody is obscured. You get that child back 5, 8, 10 days later, and they've now had that surgery, or they've had these vaccinations. Zedler said, according to Dallas Morning News, that's an issue of liberty. Wu was vocal about his belief that the law allows the state to assume authority in such situations. Let's make clear, the moment a child is removed from their home, the moment the child is removed, by law, the child is now a child of the state of Texas, said Wu. And there's a video on that, too. There's a video link in this site, okay? We have the responsibility to make sure that this child is safe and is given proper medical care. That is the law. When we put into the law, we are limiting the ability of our agency that is tasked with taking care of a child is in their custody that they are legally responsible for. We are setting a dangerous precedent, Wu continued. This is the same thing I told you when we argued over my bills, that this is the same thing I will tell you again when we argue over this bill. Representative Jonathan Strickland, Republican from Bedford, questioned Wu's choice of wording. Mr. Wu, you used the word belonging to the state of Texas. Do you want to rethink that wording? He asked. Strickland then interrupted Wu's response and went on to ask, true or false, that the CPS has taken children and found that they were wrong in doing so and returned the child. Has this happened? Representative Wu acknowledged that it has occurred on rare occasions. So that means yes. All right. Strickland challenged not only Wu, but also Representative Sarah Davis, Republican from West University Place, who sought to add an additional amendment in response to the amendment of Zedler, which would allow cancer-preventing vaccines to be administered, particularly the HPV vaccine. Davis noted statistics related to cervical cancer deaths and low HPV vaccination rates in Texas and said that HPV vaccine will eliminate cervical cancer. Strickland asked Davis if she believed that parents had the right to choose medical procedures for their children. Davis responded that she believed children that have been taken from their parents and are in protective custody undergoing a medical examination should be given a vaccine that prevents them from developing cancer. Strickland asked Davis if she understood that they were discussing the issue of children in temporary custody with no parental rights terminated during the medical examination. Agreed, but cancer is not temporary, Davis answered. Strickland repeated his question of whether she thinks parents have the right to choose medical procedures for their children, and Davis said that we have to find a balance because there is absolutely no opinion, zero science behind the fact that our vaccines are systematically harming children. Representative Jeff Leach also challenged Davis's amendment and said that it appeared that her amendment would transfer decision-making authority from families to a physician. Leach asked Davis if her amendment goes against the wishes of a child or the parents. Leach added that he was not interested in deciding which vaccines are good or bad or who needs to be vaccinated, but was focusing on the question of who would have the authority to make vaccination decisions under her amendment, who at the core, at the very basic level, who should make this decision, Leach asked Davis. Davis's amendment was tabled in a 74-64 vote. Zedler's amendment to prohibit vaccines during a medical examination was passed 74-58, with another amendment attached by Wu to allow tetanus shots to be administered in emergencies. Zedler later said the Texas Tribune that the majority of parents that he's communicated with are not overall opposed to vaccines but are troubled by the scheduling. He also said the only one that might possibly be an emergency is a tetanus shot. The video below, Wu makes an anonymous claim that parents who have not been found guilty of any wrongdoing no longer have care over their children, that those now belong to the state. When the state begins to claim they own our children, something is very wrong. And I have to agree. I'm going to tell you something, Mr. Wu. Read your damn Texas Constitution, you pathetic illiterate. I don't like name calling, okay? But you know what? I've seen the video. He's like so firm that the state it owns. If we have these children in custody, it's owned by the state of Texas. Please. You just breach your oath of office as far as I'm concerned. And anyone else that supports this cause. And I'm glad it's got shut down. Shot down. For sure. This is what's been happening. That's not around the country, my friends. Within the United States. We got people like him trying to tell us if your kid's in custody, even if you're without even just due process, they own them. I call it extortion as far as I'm concerned. more another form of racketeering. Call it like it is. But I loved it when but I loved the reply Representative Leach did was very good and rare occasions. That's what Mr. Wu said. You know what? We're a Muslim, Mr. Wu. Get the hell out of Texas. Don't even come to Florida because you'd be contaminating space. Go work at a Walmart, as far as I'm concerned. All right. Next one here came from Vice News. Came out 3 days ago by Nick Turse. It says here, the war you've never heard of. The U.S. is waging a massive shadow war in Africa. Exclusive document reveals. 6 years ago, a deputy commanding general for U.S. Army Special Operations Command gives a conservative estimate of 116 missions being carried out at any one time by Navy SEALs, Army Green Berets, and other special operation forces across the globe. Today, according to the U.S. military documents obtained by Vice News, special operators are carrying out nearly 100 missions at any given time. In Africa alone, it is the latest signs of the military's quiet but ever-expanding presence on the continent, one that represents the most dramatic growth in the deployment of America's elite troops to any region of the globe. In 2006, just 1% of all U.S. commandos deployed overseas were in Africa. In 2010, it was 3%. By 2016, that number had jumped to more than 17%. In fact, according to data supplied by U.S. Special Operations Command, there are now more Special Operations personnel devoted to Africa than anywhere except the Middle East. 1,700 people spread out across 20 countries dedicated to assisting the U.S. military African partners in their fight against terrorism and extremism. At any given time, you will find Africa conducting approximately 96 activities in 20 countries. Donald Bolduc, the U.S. Army general who runs the Special Operations Command in Africa, South Africa, wrote in an October 2016 strategic planning guidance report. The report was obtained by Vice News in response to the Freedom of Information Act request and is published in its entirety below. The Vice News reached out to South Africa and U.S. Africa Command, it was AFRICOM, for clarification on these numbers. Emails returned, receipts show an AFRICOM spokesperson read the such request, but the command did not offer a reply. The October 2016 report offers insight into what the U.S. military's most elite forces are currently doing in Africa and what they hope to achieve. In doing so, it paints a picture of reality on the ground in Africa today and what could be 30 years from now. That picture is bleak. Africa's challenges could create a threat that surpasses the threat that the United States currently faces from conflict in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. Bolduc warned he went on a site to a laundry list of challenges with which he and his personnel must contend: ever-expanding illicit networks, terrorist safe havens, attempts to subvert government authority, and steady stream of new recruits and resources. Bolduc indicated his solution was the acceleration of SOF, Special Operations Forces, missions filling a strategic gap as the military adjusts force structure now and the future. Translations: U.S. Commando in more places doing more in Africa going forward. At that time, Bolduc said that the U.S. is not at war in Africa, but this assertion is challenged by ongoing operations aimed at the militant group Al-Shabaab in Somalia, which operates often in all but ungoverned and extraordinary complex areas Bolduc calls gray zones. In January, for example, U.S. advisors conducting a counterterrorism operation alongside local Somali forces from troops from the African Union mission in Somalia observed that Al-Shabaab's fighters threatening their safety and security and conducted a self-defense strike to neutralize the threat, according to a press release from AFRICOM. earlier this month in what AFRICOM described as an advice and assist operation alongside Somali National Army forces. Navy SEAL Kyle Milken was killed, and two other U.S. personnel were injured during a firefight with the Shabab militants about 40 miles west of Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. The battle occurred shortly after President Trump loosened the Obama-era restrictions on offensive operations in Somalia, thereby allowing U.S. forces more discretion and leeway in conducting missions and opening up the possibility of more frequent airstrikes and commando raids. It will allow us to prosecute targets in a more rapid fashion, General Thomas Wildhauser, the AFRICOM commander, said of the change. In April, the U.S. military reportedly requested the locations of aid groups working in the country, an indication that yet a greater escalation in the war against al-Shabaab may be imminent. Looking at counterterrorism operations in Somalia, it is clear the U.S. has been relying heavily on a remote control form of warfare so favored by President Obama, said Jack Surley, who covers the subject for the London-based Bureau of Investigative Journalism. Recently, the U.S. has augmented this strategy, work alongside local Somali forces and African Union troops under the banner of train, advice, and assist missions and other types of support operations, according to Surley. Now they partner with local security forces but don't engage in actual combat, the Pentagon says. The truth of what that is hard to divine. The U.S. operations in Somalia are part of a larger continent spanning counterterrorism campaign that saw special operation forces deployed to at least 32 African nations in 2016, according to open source data and information supplied by U.S. Special Operations Command. The cornerstone of this strategy involves training local proxies and allies, building partners' capacity in the military lexicon. Providing training and equipment to our partners helps us improve their ability to organize, sustain, and employ a counter-violent extremist force against mutual threats, the South Africa report says. As part of this increasing involvement in the war against Boko Haram militants, like in the Chad Basin, Lake Chad Basin, it spans part of Nigeria, Cameroon, and Chad. For example, the U.S. provided $156 million to support regional proxies last year. In addition to training, U.S. special operators, including members of SEAL Team 6, reportedly assist African allies in carrying out a half dozen or more raids every month. In April, a U.S. special operator reportedly killed a fighter from Joseph Kony Lord's Resistance Army during an operation in the Central African Republic. U.S. forces also remain intimately involved in conflict in Libya after the U.S. ended an air campaign there against the Islamic State group in December. We're going to keep a presence on the ground, and we're going to develop intelligence and take out targets when they arise, Wildhauser said in March. Though Baldock said special operators are carrying out 96 missions on any given day, he didn't specify how many total missions are being carried out per year. South Africa officials did not respond to several requests for that number. Marked increase in U.S. activity tracks with the rising number of major terror groups in Africa. A 2012 version of South Africa's strategic planning documents also obtained by Vice News lists 5 major terror groups. The October 2016 files list 7 by name: Al-Qaeda in the lands of Islamic Maghreb, ISIS, Azhar al-Ashari, al-Murabitin, Boko Haram, the Lord's Resistance Army, and al-Shabaab. In addition to the other violent extremist organizations, also known as VEOs, in 2015, Bolduc said that there are nearly 50 terrorist organizations and illicit groups operating on the African continent. Terror attacks of terror attacks in the sub-Saharan Africa have skyrocketed in the past decade. Between 2006 and 2015, the last year covered by the data from the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Response to Terrorism at the University of Maryland, attacks jumped from about 100 per year very close to 2,000. From 2010 to the present, Bolduc says in his report, VEOs in Africa have been some of the most lethal on the planet. Many African indicators are trending downward, he writes. We believe the situation in Africa will get worse without our assistance. Colby Goodman, director of the director of the Washington D.C. based Security Assistance Monitor, pointed to some recent tactical gains against terror groups, but warned that progress might be short-lived and unsustainable. My continuing concerns about U.S. counterterrorism strategy in Africa, he said, is an over-focus on tactical military support to partner countries at the expense of more whole government approach and a lack of quality assessments, evaluations of U.S. security aids to these countries. And you can read it below. It has been declassified. And if I'm correct, how many pages are this? There's a whole lot of pages here. And it tells you everything about it. The roadmaps, look out for the future. And this was released October 13, 2006. Talked about the narrative, ongoing discussion on special operations in Africa, what their introduction, their motives, and what they want to look at for the next 30 years. That place has always been an issue, a lot of those countries. There's always been battles there for a very long time. Sometimes, some of them hundreds of years. A good example with the Hutu and Tutsi tribes in Rwanda before the horrific murders or Holocaust. They call it the Holocaust if you want. Democide, genocide, doesn't matter. Of over 800,000 those individuals in 100 days. They've been politically been butting heads for over 400 years, just to give you guys an example. But this is real interesting stuff, and hopefully folks can check this out. Preparations and all that, and the gray zone. It's like 14 pages long, and I say this: we need to butt out of these countries. This is getting totally ridiculous. I am not too fond on what's going on over there, but the folks in those areas got to fight for themselves and align with each other instead of using the United States as advisors with our tax dollars. Okay, this is an example of redistribution of wealth. Okay, a lot of folks out there, like they think foreign aid is okay for some countries, but they don't. But they say, "Oh, I'm against socialism," because it's the redistribution of wealth. It's a very contradictory. In other words, double standards. So you know what? Bring all of our troops home. Why more of our brothers and sisters who are serving got to go through these proxy missions and their families and so forth get traumatized from including themselves? Bring them all home. Yeah, and something here is interesting. I got from Land Destroyer, and it was actually says here, U.S. Department of Treasury owns documents revealing funding for pro-regime change propaganda in Venezuela. It's from the Treasury.gov, believe it or not. And it came out May 21st. So, oops, hold on. I made the wrong click here. And it's interesting of this act. It is entitled The Venezuela Defense of Human Rights and Civil Society of 2014. And let's hit section 6 of that. And I'm going to put that Twitter link up there so you can see it for yourself. It will be under the website GPO, which is GPO. It's all U.S. government authentic U.S. government information. You can see it for yourselves. We'll hit section 6 of this because people need to know what's really happening. Okay. Venezuela with the United States or tax dollar getting involved in their affairs. And it says here on Section 6, report on broadcasting information distribution and circumvention technology distribution in Venezuela. And it says here, A, in general, subsection A, no later than 30 days after the date of the enactment of this act, the chairman of the Broadcasting Board of Governors, in this section referred to as the Board, shall submit to Congress a report that includes 1. A thorough evaluation of the governmental, political, and technological obstacles faced by the people of Venezuela in their efforts to obtain accurate, objective, and comprehensive news and information about domestic and international affairs. 2. An assessment of current efforts relating to broadcasting, information distribution, and circumvention of technology distribution of Venezuela by the United States government and otherwise. 3. A strategy for expanding such efforts in Venezuela, including recommendations for additional measures to expand upon current efforts. B. Elements required by subsection A shall include 1. Assessment of the current federal level funding dedicated to broadcasting, information distribution, and circumvention technology distribution in Venezuela by the Board before the date of the enactment of this act. And 2. An assessment of the extent to which the current level and types of news and related programming and content provided by the Voice of America and other sources is addressing the international needs of the people of Venezuela. And 3. Recommendations for increasing broadcasting, information distribution, circumvention technology distribution in Venezuela. This was approved on December 18, 2014, and we all know who was the president of the United States back then. Barack Obama. Yeah, man. Woo! Couldn't you say that? More intervention, allegedly speaking. Something to think about, my friend. That's why you always got to see things a lot broader than what it is. But definitely add that. I'm going to add that to my memo. All right, it's by Land Destroyer, by the way. So, and like I said, they're decent. They're decent, but they got, like, I was real critical when they used that Gordon Duff report on Alex Jones. I was real critical of Gordon Duff because I know Stu Webb and many others left Veterans Today, but, you know, I'm not going to bash Land Destroyer completely on that because it's critical, but in good faith. But there's one thing you have to look at: how the United States are getting to other countries' affairs. But like I said before, when they try to make the whole Russian tides the distraction, that's okay, all right? Let's go after the man, the president. So I'm not lovey-dovey with the Venezuelan government, but you always got to look at Kio Bono, who benefits. Because one thing for sure, if this gets turned around and they overthrow Maduro, you're gonna have some of the folks in there. Hey, we want to work on the oil fields. We want some more of your oil. So you can see a little trade deal going on, natural resources and so forth. And but to the people in Venezuela, fight for what's right. Follow your heart and soul. Do it to benefit humanity in that country. All right. Okay, my friends, that is it. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share this throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you want to send me something that's interesting and I want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondences with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Scene.life, Minds.com, Patreon.com/Loki Luck III, and FutureNet.club. All right. In addition, you can email me at LokiLuck3, which is the number 3, LokiLuck number 3 altogether, at gmail.com, or you encrypted fans, supporters, LokiLuck03 at protonmail.com. All right. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.